Welcome back to Rocket Talk. I'm your host, Connor, and Johhny and Luke have actually just recently quit the show. And with me in the studio, I could call it, the studio that is Clean Feed, is Miss Kitten herself, Corie Hertzog. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
It's great to have you back, especially someone that's got radio experience. It's nice to, because even though you haven't been on the show consistently, because you are still on the radio consistently, the flow is there and you understand what it's like to be broadcasting.
Yeah, it's a lot different doing a podcast, but I love it so much.
Yeah, with the podcast, you do get a little bit more creative freedom for your content, and especially there's no restrictions on language or length of the show or anything like that. So it's got its ups and downs for both, because for radio, in my opinion, there's nothing more thrilling than being in a live setting.
Oh, yeah, it's so much fun. We were actually just doing Nerdmageddon at the pub a couple weeks ago.
Oh, man, I never got something like that.
Yeah, no, we were broadcasting trivia night live.
I am so jealous. That is awesome.
Yeah, it caused a lot of controversy in the media department.
Did it really?
Yeah,
Give
Will
me the
Murphy.
deets.
So Will Murphy, head of the TV side, he found out that we got approved to do this. And he came up to me, he's like, Corrie, why of all things, why this? I was like, what you talking about, Will? He goes, how are you going to prevent any FCC violations? Because you cannot financially afford that. It's like, thank you for calling me poor. And he goes, and like, I just don't know how you're going to be able to keep your audience engaged because it's just meant to be for 3 hours of drinking. I'm like, oh, well, I've thought about this for years. I've wanted to do this for years. We did not just dive into this blindly.
I get his worry and all of that, but if he hasn't been there for the prep or anything like that to see why it's prepared, then maybe he should come in and ask about the preparedness first, then just basically kind of tell you, hey, this isn't for you.
Yeah,
in
like
not so many words.
I even tried to show him, like, yeah, like, here's the list of, like, everything that we've got done. I've talked to the host, Jeff Zeller, who's great. We've got all this planned out. We've figured out ways to, like, avoid most FCC violations. We're just going to be really careful. We have someone on the dump button. And it went really well. We did not have to use the dump button once.
Great.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you drinking this morning?
I am drinking hot coffee creamed with iced caramel coffee.
That's awesome. Is this new coffee or old coffee?
New coffee.
I'm jealous of that because I just reheated coffee from yesterday for my beb check.
I do that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Em hates it. She's just like, just make a new cup, and I'm like, there is a third of the pot left, and like that's just such a waste. Just reheat it. It's not as good, but like what you did, just splash a little bit of almond milk in there, and yeah, I think it's a waste if we don't use all of it.
Are you an almond milk person, regular milk, or oat milk?
I would more likely drink a glass of regular cow's milk than anything else. I don't drink as much milk as I should, but for coffee, I'm more of a creamer kind of guy. But if I'm going to cream it with something, if I don't have my regular like hazelnut or anything like that, I'll probably use almond milk.
Right on. Have
you ever had goat milk?
Yes, I've had goat milk cheesecake.
Really? How was that?
It's a little cheesier than like regular cow milk cheesecake. And because like it was all the dairy stuff in it was made from goat milk, so like the caramel drizzle that was on it, the actual like cheesecake itself, so the consistency is like a little thicker, a little gummier.
Ew. Gross.
Yeah, it's the best way I can describe it.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. You were the GM of X106, and I'm not sure if you've said that on the podcast or not, or if our listeners know, but you did that for, was it a full year or was it longer?
I'm still the GM technically. I'm the GM until the end of the school year.
Ooh, that's awesome. And I imagine in a pandemic, it's just the same.
Yeah, we've been very blessed. So audio broadcasting is ideal for a pandemic because you don't have to be in the studio to do a show. And so a lot of our stuff is really just hey, make sure you're sanitizing everything. If you're going to have multiple people in the studio, you still have to wear your mask. But for the most part, we've been the least affected.
Good. It's really tough for all the other media emphases, whatever it is. But audio is ideal for this setting. And overall, your experience being in charge of all these knuckleheads on the radio, I mean, how's it been?
It's actually kind of been a bit of a struggle. So I'm not the most imposing person on the planet. And I'm very goofy when I'm not like in the studio or in class. So people sometimes have a hard time seeing the difference between friend and classmate Corrie and GM Corrie. So they'll like, oh, it's one and the same, when it's not entirely, if that makes sense.
Well, there does have to be a line of professionalism.
Yeah, and a line of respect that just unfortunately does not always get acknowledged. Like this last week, I love my radio kids to death, but we had air checks due. So just a minute to a minute and a half recording of them talking. Easiest thing to do in our department, I'd argue. I gave them 2 weeks advance notice that, hey, these are going to be due. I reminded them a week ahead of time. We're all in Slack. So I would send messages in Slack. So I messaged them 24 hours ahead of time, 9 a.m. that morning, and then an hour before it was due. And I told them, like, I'm not accepting any late work because I gave you so many reminders. I had someone submit it a week late.
A week?
Yeah, a week late.
A day late or an hour to a day late is one thing, but an entire week, bruh.
Yeah, and I even told them, like, I gave you 2 weeks, so I'm not accepting late work. I feel like that's fair. And so I had about 10 people emailing me anywhere from an hour to 24 hours after it was due. Be like, yeah, I can't wait to hear it. I was like, we're not playing it in class.
And that's completely fair. One, you're the boss. You are also giving them warnings. And now, because you're my friend, Corrie, and I don't see you as my boss, I'm just going to submit the late work. And come on, man. Like, oh, dog, don't do this to me. Come on, can you just give me a little bit of slack? And I'm more than I already gave you? Like,
yeah.
So how do you, have you ever had to lay down the hammer on someone? And if you have had to do it, how did you go about it?
Yeah, quite a few times. So typically I let our sub-practicums or like our exec board handle things internally. I think it's important for them to establish that they are also leaders in the classroom. But once it gets to a point where they're like, hey, I've told them, X amount of times, they're still not doing it, then scholarship steps in. And we'll have a meeting with them, their sub-practicum leader, and all through scholarship. And we'll just kind of sit down and be like, hey, so here's what's been going on from what we understand. Will you please explain what's going on your end? And they'll usually explain, and they'll be like, oh, well, I've had such and such going on, which I'm like, I understand. But at the same time, like, the radio, while very individualistic, also has to work as a group. So when you don't turn your things in, that becomes a problem. So we'll usually be like, if you have a specialty show, that goes on hiatus for 2 to 3 weeks. And then to make sure they get caught up. If they do their work, they get their show back, no big deal. We keep going. If they don't, then the show is canceled.
Wow. And have you had to cancel shows?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We actually had one just a couple weeks ago. They would not sign the logs, which are legal documents for listeners who haven't done radio. They're the legal document saying, hey, I am responsible for what goes on over air for this allotted time. And we had one show called Gen 2, which was very similar to Nerdmageddon. They were a gaming show. And they just would not sign the logs. So after 3 times of them not doing that, we're just like, hey, we're just going to pull the plug on the show until you can remember to sign the log.
Man, that's really, really tough. And I know the show Gen 2. That's... But it comes with the territory of being in your position, too. And it's never, ever fun having to do something like that, especially if you know these kids so well.
Oh, yeah. It's never fun, but it's something that I always tell them, like, hey, I will be your friend outside the studio. I'll be your friend outside of class. But when it comes to KZLX, I am no longer your friend. The radio comes first.
Exactly. And I mean, you and I have been on shows together. I've guested on your shows, Coffee Break before, but we were on Nerdmageddon together for quite a long time, actually. And so but there's supposed to be an accountability with each other, especially if it comes to content or delivery or prep. There's a lot. We did so much prep work every week.
Oh, yeah.
Which was cool. It was cool. I liked it, but it was a lot.
We've actually kind of changed that up a little bit. So now, for the fun segment, we're usually doing one of two things. We're either doing a Nerd Royale, which is always fun. And then on the other week, we do Monster of the Week, which is like D&D, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of style.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that kind of helps. But yeah, no, we're still doing a ton of prep work. Like, we have a meeting every week where everyone has to bring like 2 news stories. That's
really, really helpful. And with the accountability, especially when you're on air in a live setting, you have to have, like nonverbal cues, or you just have to be able to accept criticism in a professional and not personal manner. So if there are shows that are not doing what they're supposed to do, aka signing the logbook or something like that, if nobody is able to hold that accountability with each other on a personal or professional level, then it kind of says a lot about the entire show altogether. And so I imagine it probably, if you aren't able to have the accountability with each other on the show, then you're probably also not doing very good with your content. Again, this is just speculation, but I can't imagine it's that far off.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you've been there. You're actually there for like the transition from just being on air to also doing like the visual side of things. So you understand that, there's a lot of accountability, and for a show to be good, you have to put in a lot of effort. Because I'm still good friends with the guy I replaced, Joel. And I'll always be like, oh yeah, I have like the Nerdmageddon meeting. He goes, why do you have a meeting every week? He's like, when I first started, we just like showed up and whatever we had.
There is something to be said about spontaneity, but if you really, really want to give the people a really good show, you have to have some sort of prep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say like we should be entirely scripted, because at least at Nerdmageddon we're not. We're very much, giving our commentary with the news stories, but we have that list of news stories and we know what order we're talking about things, which is a big help.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, entirely scripted at that point, that's just, I mean, not like
an audio drama.
It's an audio drama. Nothing wrong with that. That's like 30s radio. That's like 1930s radio, but like, at least that's, you know what? I'll say that's not X106.
No.
We're supposed to be the hip station, I guess.
We're actually changing how we're registered with the FCC. I don't think I've told you that. Yeah.
Whoa. Give me the deets.
So instead of being a top 40 station, we have so many specialty shows now that we're going to be registered as like talk radio instead of top 40.
Interesting. That's wow. And so what are the specifics on the like what kind of regulations or what kind of accountability are they going to hold on us?
So that's actually something that I'm not going to be in charge of. That's going to be something that happens when I'm gone. Our new GM, Simon, one of my co-hosts, he's actually going to be in charge of all that. So I've been letting him handle that and slowly start taking over responsibilities.
Right on. So that's, wow, X106 is changing so much. Now, I kind of want to revisit the inner working relationship with hosts and like co-hosts on shows and stuff like that. So when you and I were on, like I remember the very first time you came on, we were still just a radio show. We hadn't even turned into a simulcast. I don't know, for whatever reason, you just rustled my jimmies.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, because now that I've known you for so long, I just find you nothing short of delightful all the time. But when I first met you, you got under my skin for whatever reason. But we were just never allowed. We could not allow that to affect the content before.
Oh, no.
And so when you instruct your freshmen and your sophomores, because upperclassmen probably don't need as much instruction, but like, do you teach them about that?
Yeah, I talk to them about the importance of, if you are going to have like a cast or at least a co-host, it may not always be in your best interest to pick your best friend. And that's simply because sometimes, one, you need like different personalities to make a show dynamic. Mm-hmm. Which, you know, Nerdmageddon, I call it Oldmageddon when it's like our generation of it. So on Oldmageddon, like we had like a variety of personalities, and I always tell them, like, you know, pick someone who you can vibe with, that you get along with, but also you have no problem telling, hey, you need to pick up your end of the bargain, you need to pick up the slack, if it needs to come down to that.
Yes. Yep. And but that's not to say that it will never happen, nor will it happen. But
yeah,
I guess where I'm kind of going in this direction is like, you and I know a story of our time on Nerdmageddon, and it happened a little bit when I was there, but I didn't know, and then a lot of it when Corie and I had graduated.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you'd be comfortable telling this story.
Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable. Just because I don't want to put him entirely on blast, I'm just going to call him Discount Jack Black instead of using his real name. He looks like Jack Black.
He looks like a Dollar Tree Jack Black.
My boss called him that.
That's awesome.
So I met Discount Jack Black my second year of college, and he had a crush on me. And so he invited me to a party, and this was like the semester before I really got into Nerdmageddon.
How old were you and him at the time?
I was 19, and I don't remember how old he was. He's a couple years older than I am. I think he might be about your age.
Okay.
And he invited me to go to a party. Like, it was just him and his friends, and they were drinking, they were smoking, and playing video games. And at the time, I was not really into gaming. And he kept calling me his girlfriend the entire time we were there. And then he drove me home, still a little inebriated, but I didn't know where I was, and like I did not have any service on my phone. So I was like kind of stuck.
Oh boy.
And so I ghosted him. And that's kind of the preface for the story I'm going to tell. When Nerdmageddon went from just being radio to TV, we got a small crew. And Discount Jack Black happened to be part of that crew. And so I bit the bullet, and I had a private conversation with him. I just said, hey, I should not have ghosted you the way that I did, but what you did made me uncomfortable for X, Y, and Z reasons. Because there were a couple more things that happened that aren't really relevant. But, you know, I want to make sure that our content is good, and I don't want there to be anything awkward. So I just want to be friends. That's all I ever want us to be, is friends. And he said that even though he still had feelings for me, he understood, and that's how it would kind of go. For the most part, things were fine while you and Court were still there. And then when you graduated, we asked him to be a host on the show. And that's when things kind of went downhill. And if you have little kids, this is a part where you should probably cover their ears. But he started sexually harassing me on the show by making really inappropriate comments. The first big one that people kind of took notice of, like, hey, that's not cool. We were filming a short film based off the board game Donner Dinner Party, which has to deal with cannibalism. And because of my work schedule, I had to be the first one to quote unquote die. And so how it was filmed is we would cover them in fake blood, and they would have to reflect on, oh my gosh, we just ate our friend. And he made the comment, when I pictured eating her out, that's not exactly what I had in mind.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that is on YouTube. That still made it in.
That made it in? Oh my God.
I think so. Yeah, I think that was the take that made it in.
Oh man, I remember watching it, but I don't know.
Maybe
I just didn't notice it, but that's disgusting.
And he made several other comments like that. And then he and I got into a bit of a fight on the show. Not necessarily on the show, but like during a show meeting, because it was getting to a point where he and Johhny, who was still on the show, they kind of dominated the whole show. It was really just them always arguing about something. And so I had a meeting with them. I was like, hey, because you guys argue so much, I don't feel like I ever get to talk about like the stories I want to talk about. And I feel like I've just kind of been reduced to working the board, being the butt of jokes, and being a token pair of boobs. Like, that's all I feel like. And I don't even want to be on the show anymore because I don't like coming in and being that role.
And at this point, how long had he been on the show? Ballpark it.
This was like still that first semester he was like on the show as a host.
Okay.
Yeah, like all this happened like within the first semester of him being on the show as a host.
Mere few months.
Yeah, if that. And he sent me like 10 paragraphs on Snapchat just berating me, saying that if I couldn't fight for my spot on the show, I have no business being a host. I have no business running the show. I should just give the show over to him because clearly I just can't handle it. I have no business applying to even be the general manager of KZLX at that point if I can't even fight for a spot on my own show. Blah, blah, blah. And I was in tears. And I messaged Johhny. I was like, I need to talk. And so we sat down, Johhny and I, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna talk to him because you have a hard time standing up for yourself, which was true. Still true. And so he pulled aside and he's like, hey, a lot of stuff that you're saying isn't cool. And you, like, I understand you're frustrated with her, but at the same time, you don't have the right to yell at her the way that you did. And he's like, yeah, okay. And so that was the next episode was the episode where they're like, okay, we're going to be a little more conscious of letting Corrie talk. And one thing that I told him was like, pay attention to like wrap up signals. Well, tried to give me the wrap up signal, but I didn't see it. And so I wrapped it up like a couple seconds after we normally cut it off. And he just started yelling at me. And he's like, if you're going to tell us to pay attention to like cut off signals, you need to do it yourself, hold yourself accountable, blah, blah, blah. And Johhny goes, dude, like, what did we just talk about? Like, don't yell at her. And I left for the rest of the show. Like, I left for like the rest of that episode.
And how long into the episode was it?
About 30 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was not happy with it. And so Discount Jack Black and I had another conversation. I was like, you cannot keep talking to me like this. If you want to stay on the show, then like tell me what you think needs change and I'll tell you what I think needs to be changed and we'll come to a compromise and we'll make the show better that way. And so he was like, well, you're just not professional. He's like, that's my big thing is no one on the show is professional. It's like, okay. And so we moved on and we went into doing the show over the summer since we were all in town. And on live broadcast, he made the comment that he would buy me a vibrator for my birthday.
Oh my. I remember now that was one of the comments he made because I remember you telling this story a while ago. I guess for some reason I'm still somehow shocked that he said that, but
I'm still shocked.
What's the context? Like, how did he think this was an okay thing to say?
I'm not sure. Like, we were talking about a news segment, and it was about like a women's sports team. Their goodie bags had like waxing kits and something else in it, and like that's how he came to the conclusion, I guess. And then a couple episodes later, or maybe it was the same episode, I forget what it was, but we were playing a voting game. And one of them was like, oh, most likely to seduce a politician and like take over the world that way or something like that. And they voted for me for some odd reason. And he goes, oh yeah, she definitely uses sex as a way to like manipulate people and get what she wants. And I was like, how do you know that? Because I never slept with you.
That is, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, does he not know you? I know you. That is not even kind of you.
And then I think it was like maybe a couple episodes later, he said he'd like buy my bath water. Because that was like when that big like scandal was going around. Yeah. And he said it quote unquote jokingly, but I was like, that's a weird line. That's not something.
There are I can't even think of a way to make that sound like a joke. Like that's the kind of thing where you say, oh, I was just joking when you get caught.
Yeah. And then during this time, like at the start of every season or semester, I would have like the whole meeting basically just be focused on the entire cast has to fill out this list of questions. So does the crew. And it's basically just how are we holding ourselves accountable? What are your expectations from the show? From your co-host, from yourself, so on and so forth. And his big thing was always, well, you guys need to be more professional. You guys don't take filming seriously. It's supposed to be fun because you're filming, not because you're actually having fun on set. And I remember looking at him, I was like, if the cast of Game of Thrones can have a blooper reel, so can we.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that part of that is like we're all friends here, so like you guys are still pumping out content.
Yeah.
You guys are still being professional about the meetings. Why not have fun while you're at it?
Yeah. Oh, another one. This is back that last semester. We were filming another short film, and he made a comment because we were supposed to like smuggle food or whatever, and I said I had apples in my bag, and he looked at me and was like, "Well, I wouldn't call them apples. I'd call them more like melons," and like looked me up and down.
Boy, just
yeah.
I did not know that one. That one
I think is also in that short film, if I remember correctly.
Oh my God!
Yeah, because like we didn't have like a ton of takes, and I was just like, okay, moving along.
That's just beyond not cool.
Oh yeah,
that's harassment.
And then that school year started, and again he was kind of going on about like how we're not professional, and then we're filming a betrayal film, so based off of a betrayal at House on the Hill haunt. And at that time, Molly Gardner, our good friend, she was our producer. And Eli, who was our former producer, now host, was also there. And they were dating. And something was said, and said, oh, well, Molly and Corrie have equally great tits. And Eli goes, dude, Molly's my girlfriend. You can't say stuff like that. And goes, well, Corrie's fair game.
What?
Yeah, and Eli goes, no, she's my girlfriend now too. Shut up.
Eli's awesome.
Yeah, love Eli.
Eli, if you're listening, you're a cool cat.
Yeah, Molly, Eli, we love you both. And it was just getting to a point where I was not comfortable coming into the show. I was having such a hard time, like, just dealing with it. And I was going over to Molly and Eli's house a lot. And then, finally, it was getting close to a con that we regularly cover, NebCon. And I realized that we'd either be staying at your parents' house, Connor, because you said they would be okay with that, or we'd be staying in hotel rooms. And I just remember thinking, I do not want to be in a space where I cannot lock the door because if he's going to be around, and I don't want to have to like share a hotel room with him.
The fact that you had that fear is like, because he's said so many different things, and he's pushed back against people trying to call him out to be better. It's that says a lot about this person's particular character.
Yeah, and I ended up talking to the wrong person who ended up sharing my concerns with someone I wish they hadn't. Like, this person was like, you either tell Will and Alex, who are the TV and radio advisors, or I will. And so I was kind of forced to like come forward and be like, hey, this is stuff that's been going on. And they had to kick him off the show for me because I wasn't quite sure how to handle it. Couple of follow-up things to that. So you were at that con, Connor. We invited you because we're like, we need some more people. And I remember this guy came up to us at like the last day of the convention, and he just said, you know, you guys are the reason that we do like this whole press thing, and we invite student media to come here because we see you, you know, just working really hard and being professional. And I about cried because I had been hearing for like 2.5 semesters at that point, like, I'm unprofessional, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't deserve to like be in this position. And I was almost in tears.
God bless that person.
Yeah. And and then I think this is something that like a lot of people, I'll say people because, you know, men can experience sexual harassment too. There's like this idea that you sometimes think, did I bring it on myself? Did I intentionally lead them on? Blah, blah, blah. And I've been thinking that for a while, and I felt this immense guilt I had no reason feeling. And then Will Murphy sent me a message on Facebook, and it was screenshots of this girl who found our show, and she saw like behavior that was on like camera, which was far more tame than what was going on off screen. And she was just railing into Will, being like, why are you letting this happen? She's clearly uncomfortable. Why are you allowing him to talk to her like this? And Will was like, hey, like, this is old content. We let them keep it up because they're proud of what they made. That was handled. But if you want to talk to her, here's her contact information. And that was just really affirming. So, yeah, that's kind of not even really the end of it, because he's still in the town I live in currently. And we both work at the NPR station.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. So we have in Wells Hall, where the media at Northwest has their classes and their stations, there's an NPR affiliated radio station there as well that is affiliated with the school and has, you know, particularly upperclassmen in the media department work for the radio station to get some professional experience. And since Corrie and this person, Discount Jack Black, are both in the media department, they were both able to get hired, and now they both work there. Just for some context about why there's an NPR-affiliated radio station there, and why you're still working together despite Will.
And so the person in charge of our scheduling was like, "Hey, like, say hello to the new hires. We invited Discount Jack Black back." I went to her office the next day. I was like, "Look, I'm not going to try and get anybody in trouble. All I'm saying is, please, to the best of your ability, don't let us have shifts that, you know, bump into each other. So I don't want to come in before him. I don't want him coming in after, like, before me. I don't want it to be where, like, one of us works news, the other one works board. If we can avoid it, I would really appreciate that." And she's been great about that. We only ever had to work together once. And I just called in a friend and I was like, "Hey, come hang out with me. Let's do homework while I work my board shift." Because he's doing like a basketball thing. So we're not going to like really interact as much as possible. I just don't want to have to like look at him.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Patty was really cool. Actually, she was a really good boss. She put up with a lot of my shit because I was just, you know, a dumb college kid not knowing what he was doing. And oh man, I watched so much YouTube during my shifts, like an unhealthy amount of YouTube and or Netflix during my shift. So there were occasionally parts where I was stumbling through what I was saying because I was ill prepared. But Patty was just she was just like, "Connor, you're just going to be a dumb kid, aren't you?" She didn't actually say that to me, but I know she was thinking it. And so overall, like, now that has happened to you, how has it affected the rest of your time on the radio or in media in general, if it has at all?
I mean, it's definitely had an impact because at that point, I had to grow a spine, to put it bluntly. I don't like confrontation a whole lot, as that whole story obviously shows. So I actually got a lot better of just telling people, "Hey, I don't appreciate you talking to me that way. I'm not going to tolerate it. So you can either fix your attitude and come talk to me when you've calmed down or you've rethought about what you want to say, or this conversation is going to end and I'm going to walk away.
I'm glad it made you get to that point where you're able to do that. I'm just sad that it had to be that particular situation to help you grow into being a more assertive person.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I'd ever wish. And again, because we live in the same town, things can get very awkward. Like, he was at my coworker's wedding, which is how my boss gave him the nickname Discount Jack Black. Because my boss, so it was my two bosses, my coworker who wasn't getting married, and then the coworker who was getting married. So it was none of us getting married. We were hanging out. I put him out. I was like, hey, like, that's the guy I've told you about. And my boss goes, I'll fight him. I was like, no, not at the wedding. Not at the wedding.
Not here.
Not here. Lauren looks too pretty in her dress. And she goes, okay. But I actually talked to that coworker who invited him, and she goes, I wish you would have told me before I invited him to my wedding because I didn't even want him there.
This is, so this kind of whole situation, it just, like, so you might, not you, Corrie, but, like, I'm just speaking to the general audience, and, like, I know that you might think you're joking. You might think that it's hilarious, and it may be for your group or for your immediate friend group or something like that, but to someone else, that can be really, really serious and really, really scary. So just be smart and don't put people into that situation, especially if he or she has said, don't make these jokes anymore. And if you just keep doing that, that says a lot about you and your character. If you're going to say it, if you're going to continue to say these uncomfortable things to people who have asked you not to, like there are times and places for jokes, but if it makes people uncomfortable, you'd better shut that shit down right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So, thank you. I really do appreciate you sharing that story again. I know that you've shared it before with other people, and I think you wrote the story for some sort of YouTuber or something like that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, so that's actually how I got forced into telling the advisors. Was I told someone, because I only told like a select few people, like, hey, here's like that YouTube story. If you want to hear like what's been going on, here it is. So I only told like the current cast of Nerdmageddon at the time, other than Discount Jack Black. So like you guys, and then one other person who went to the GM, like my equivalent at the TV station, who was like, well, why is she only saying something now? And he was like, if you don't tell the advisors, I will. He's like, and I'll show them the YouTube channel.
Wow.
Yeah. So that person and I don't get along very well.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. At all.
Yeah. But how have things been, like transitioning from radio to podcast for you?
So I've actually been on podcasts even in college. Producers. I've been in a couple of podcasts as well. But mostly I was an editor and a producer. And so I've produced and edited probably well over 200 podcasts now.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. I did one for the newspaper. I was actually the first producer and editor for the newspaper's podcast. What is it called? I can't even. It's been so long. I can't even remember what it was called.
Yeah.
I feel terrible about that.
I wouldn't.
Well, I actually had quite a bit of fun with that, and it gave me some great experience with that. So, and then I also edited. So this podcast my brother and I did in high school, but that didn't last very long, anyways. And now I've been producing and editing, co-producer, co-editor with this podcast now for 57 weeks, and there's some other podcasts I'm also forgetting. I've just done so damn many, so I apologize for not remembering or giving you the names of all of them, but it's been really, really great, and it's not that big of a transition other than the loosening of the reins without an FCC to kind of keep us in line, because I mean I've got so many opinions on the FCC, and for good and bad, but it's basically the same. At this point, it's the same, and it takes the same kind of nonverbal cues and these unspoken kind of connections with people when you're on. Although for a podcast, you need to be a lot more prepared, in my opinion, because this is edited. This is something that's not live. You have an unlimited amount of takes. The only restraint is the amount of time you have. So with radio, with radio you should be prepared, and but you can have some jiving with people that is unplanned and unscripted for a little while. But with podcasting, like if you don't come in properly prepared, and so many times I have come in ill-prepared for the concept we're speaking, it's going to stick there, and it's going to be even worse to the listener because you had the ability to do an unlimited amount of takes.
Oh, yeah. So I actually think, I'm going to brag on KZLX a little bit, but I think when it comes to producing podcasts, KZLX was like a really good start. So back before the pandemic happened, there was this big mega conference in Minneapolis, and I went there. It was like less than a month after your wedding, and I went up there and I was doing the radio track, and all these like GMs and everything, we were all sitting, and they're like, yeah, we don't really let our DJs like produce a whole lot. Like, we tell them like, you have to say this at this time, you're going to play this song, like you have it very listed out. And I just remember sitting there going, yeah, no, we let our freshmen have specialty shows if they ask.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they got like so upset at that. They're like, well, how can you like hold them accountable? How can like it possibly be good? I'm like, I mean, if they have that drive, I trust them. I'm going to listen very carefully.
That's insulting. And that's one of the things that I always used as a sell for Northwest. If I bumped into a student who just happened to be shadowing or touring or something like that, I'd be like, yeah, you can be on air your first year. And most bigger schools won't let you do that. Some really, really big schools won't even let you be on air until you're an upperclassman.
Oh, yeah. And, like, we had one, they're like, only our exec board is allowed to have, like, specialty shows. So, like, Nerdmageddon, Weekend Sports Kickoff, what we have that's usually run by, like, sophomores at the very youngest because we want people to stick around for a while. They're like, yeah, no, that would never fly. I'm like, oh.
No, like, come on. That's, yeah. Bearcat Banter, by the way, is the name of the podcast from the Northwest Missourian.
Okay.
Yeah, with Andrew Wegley. He was the main host. Yeah. God, I missed that guy. He was actually a really cool guy to me. I never really got to know him that well, and I only ever saw him for the podcast. But yeah, he was a really cool guy, and we connected on baseball. So yeah, that's just if you have something to say, it will probably be interesting as long as you can present it in a way that is interesting to the listener, especially with the story that you told. You have a really great way, in my opinion, of presenting the story.
Well, thank you.
And you have something to say, so I'm going to listen to it. But there are many times where it's just such uninspired content, and especially like with me, Johnny, and Luke. They're not gonna lie. I'll say it here on the podcast. There were many weeks where there was so little to talk about. Like, you could just listen, and we are so uninspired, and we are just scraping the bottom of the barrel to get something out. Oh yeah.
Nerdmageddon, like the current cast, we've actually had to have a talk about that and about like matching each other's energies. Yeah. So earlier I was talking about like we submit air checks. I still submit an air check of the show, and I tell them, rip me to shreds. And so like this last one, they're like, yeah, people just sound like they don't want to be there. I was like, okay. So we had to have a talk, and again, like, you can blame part of it on the pandemic, and this can be for both like Rocket Talk and Nerdmageddon, where it's just like there wasn't a whole lot going on news-wise. So you really are scraping the bottom of the barrel, being like, anything, give us a crumb.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. With Nintendo too, because it's like, come on, Nintendo, give us something, because they were so quiet for like over a year, I think.
Yeah. And so we've just had to have conversations where it's like, I will pump you full of coffee if I have to, but we can't have like 3 people up here and then 1 person down here or vice versa. Like, we got to balance out.
Even if it's like 5 people that are up and 1 person that down, that 1 person down will drag everyone down with him or her. And it just, that's the way it works. And that if it's like 5 people down, the 1 person up will not bring everyone else back up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The negative energy pulls a lot harder than positive energy when it comes to I think, in my opinion, media. And you know that, especially because I've had to have conversations. I remember when it was me, Johhny, and Jeff. We were Nerdmageddon for a summer, and I think we had Devin on sometimes, Devin Williams.
Yep.
We had I don't know if we knew you at that point. I can't remember.
No, you did not.
No, we didn't know you. And so we did have, I think, Joel on and Court on occasionally. Like, some of our friends would rotate, but it was me, Johhny, and Jeff for a while, actually. And I remember when we were talking about matching each other's energy, I was going about it all the wrong way, because we were having one of our prep sessions, one of our, it was like a day or 2 before, if that, or something like that. And I was saying, hey, guys, if we make a joke and it actually makes you laugh, emphasize the laugh a little bit more. If we make a joke and it gives some sort of reaction, if it's a positive reaction, emphasize that positive reaction. I was asking everyone to be fake for the sake of being on air. I was going about it in all the wrong way, because then all of a sudden, not only do we sound fake and the listeners can totally tell, it's just it makes the other content suffer, because what if it's something that doesn't make people laugh?
Yeah.
Then everyone, all of a sudden, it's just dead silent, and then when you come back up from that dead silence, it's not that fake energy you were going for earlier. And I remember talking, Johhny and I were in his pickup. We had to go, I think, to this auto repair shop or something like that, but we were just having a conversation. And I remember telling him, like, hey, Johhny, like, if I've ever done anything to make you uncomfortable, or to that made you feel like you weren't completely uniquely you on air, I'm very sorry. And he's like, Connor, actually, I did feel that way. Thank you for telling me that. And so after I stopped pushing so hard, like shoving people into the light, everyone being as naturally them made the content that much better.
Oh, yeah. And I remember you and I had a couple of conversations kind of similar to that. And I don't know if you remember them, but there was one time that you just kind of pulled me aside and you're like, hey, I'm really sorry that I've been like really angry with you like these last few weeks. And I remember looking at you going, you are angry? I was so oblivious. You're like, yeah, I've been kind of taking it out on you. I was like, oh, okay.
That was when I was first getting to know you, and this is kind of going back to the beginning of this episode, and we're gonna have to wrap up this episode soon here.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, and I don't know why, you got under my skin so hard. You rustled my jimmies so hard, and it is beyond me why you bothered me. But
I think it was the puns.
Maybe it might have been the puns. It definitely might have been the puns. But yeah, but I was more angry than was actually, like, I was disproportionately angry to what you deserved. And I remember I felt like I was snapping at you on air, but obviously, like, you know, through a smile and through a way that would try to make it sound not
passive aggressive.
Passive aggressive. That's the best way of describing it. I remember probably being a little bit passive aggressive to you on air. However, since you were oblivious, then I guess it wasn't all that bad. But like, I'm sorry, Corrie. Like, you are such a delight. And now that I got to know you.
Yeah. My mom still thinks for some odd reason, she still thinks you hate me.
No.
Like, yeah. Like, I was talking to her. She's like, yeah. Like, she's like, I don't know how I feel about Connor. Like, I think he just doesn't like you. I was like, no, that's just how we goof around.
Oh my gosh. I disliked you for all of a couple months, but like, nah, you and I have known each other for years now. Yeah. So like, no, like that was long, like ancient history.
Oh yeah. Connor and I are good friends now, in case you guys didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah. And, yeah, well, I'm totally willing to let the listeners know what kind of a person I was, just for the sake of wanting to get people to listen and wanting to get people to view our show. Because I was still pretty new to the media world. And so when Nerdmageddon started picking up some viewership, like on Facebook, but also our live views, like I was wanting to do anything to build it. And not only I'm 25 now, so I'm way more wise and more intelligent than I was back then. But it's just like that was never going to work in the first place.
Yeah, and like your dislike of me is not completely unjustified because I was really annoying, and I was still very much trying to, I guess, kind of prove that like I deserved to be there because I had some pretty bad imposter syndrome, and there was like the joke that like I had dated my way on the show, and I still thought that was funny. I still think that's a very funny joke.
Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, like for the new listeners, like she was dating Joel, who was the first, technically the second or third host, but like he was because there was Karen and I can't remember other Joel. Yeah, there was the other Joel on there, but then Joel took over for them. Yeah, and
so there was that. So I think part of it was just like me trying to prove like, yes, I can like make content, and I was also just still trying to figure out like where I fit in to the dynamic of the group since I was that newcomer. So your anger and like frustration with me was not completely unjustified. So I hope that makes you feel better.
No, but okay, a little bit, but like the type of like the amount of anger that I had towards you. Obviously, I wasn't going to be cussing you out. I was not going to be yelling at you, and I wasn't going to get you try to get you off the show. Not even a little bit. Never. It was just like it just was just like me gritting my teeth when we were on air together for a little while. But then when you were on, when Nerdmageddon got bigger and better, we had you on, and I was thinking, there's no other person that should be in this chair other than her.
No.
Well, yeah, you like, especially because you became such a close knit member of the family, I'll say. And you actually do bring like an entirely unique personality to the radio station that I think is great for radio.
Aw, shucks.
Yeah. And I've made amends with everyone that I've I mean, it wasn't that long that I was asking people to be fake for views or anything like that. But I've made amends with all of them, but I still like, that's something I will always regret is because we're not even famous. We weren't making money. I think the peak of our viewership was like 20 something entirely for our live viewership. So like in a way, I was letting fame go to my head, and I still wasn't even famous. That's how much of a moron I was. And there's plenty of other examples that don't involve the media department, but and I'm still occasionally a moron, but at least now I know, especially like I know how to deal with other personalities on the show. I know what's good quality content that if people listen, they listen, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you've actually been like a really big inspiration for me when it comes to like leading the show, because you're like the leader when I like first started. So I was like, okay, how did Connor handle this?
I do appreciate that. A lot of that is just because on Nerdmageddon, for the most part, until Discount Jack Black came into it, we all did have somewhat decent accountability, and I mean, Eli and Molly being there to let us know like if something's going wrong, and then like on. For us hosts, you have to be able to take constructive criticism well.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot be in this industry unless you are able to take constructive criticism. And plenty of people have told me if they can tell that if I'm ill prepared, and that's completely deserving.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as like my leadership goes, like yeah, maybe, but it's also it was pretty easy because everyone else was good at what they did and needed to do what they did when they did it, and it happened.
Yeah, and but yeah, no, like that's just kind of like a little inspiration of like, okay, how did Connor handle something like this?
I do.
How are we gonna do it better than Connor?
That's always leave the show better than where you found it. That right?
Yes.
All right, so we are almost at the 1 hour mark. It is time to wrap things up. So first off, I want to get into recommendations. Luke recommended a video from SB Nation, Dorktown, I think is what it's called, and it's about the football drive that changed the game. I think that's what it's called. Let me triple check.
The god-awful drive that changed NFL history from Dorktown.
Did you watch it?
Yes.
Me too.
I watched it like 30 minutes before the show.
Me too. That's okay. And so I'm a football fan. But Corrie, you're not the biggest sports fan, so I do want to hear your take on this.
For a lot of it, I was very confused because they use a lot of football terms and things that I just don't know, and that's on me for not knowing it because they're pretty popular. But they are talking about my hometown team, the Kansas City Chiefs. So I was a little interested. I'm like, okay, how badly did we mess up this time? And it actually ended in a way that was like, okay, I understand. I understand where they were going with this one. So
okay, yeah,
I thought it was pretty cool.
Were you able to comprehend what they were talking about?
Yeah, basically the Chiefs messed up so badly that the people in charge fired the coach prematurely, got another coach that was mediocre, and it all led up to them getting Andy Reid, is basically their whole spiel.
Yeah, actually, that's a not a bad summarization. It gets a little bit more complex than that, but for the bare bones of it, yes, that's kind of what happened. And there was this drive in 2011 against the New York Jets. It was the Kansas City Chiefs and New York Jets, and the Chiefs were penalized so often that the Jets were able to score a touchdown from over 90 yards with a net total 19 yards or something like that they gained. Yeah. But there were so many penalties that they got down to the end zone anyways. And so Mark Sanchez was the quarterback actually at that time. And there's plenty of people that would argue he's the worst quarterback of all time. I don't know if all time, but he's pretty dang bad. When you get the chance, go ahead and go on YouTube and look up the butt fumble.
The butt fumble, okay.
The butt fumble. That's probably something Mark Sanchez wants to die, but it's never going to. So as a sports guy, I actually fairly decent sports guy, but I would recommend this to any sports nut. Any avid football fan would enjoy this. Anybody who likes statistics would enjoy a video essay like this. And Luke recommends good video essays. So let's go ahead and give our rating. I would probably rate this a good 7 out of 10 god-awful Kansas City Chiefs teams that would take down an undefeated Green Bay Packers team.
I do have to take off a couple points because it's sports and therefore it gets penalized right off the bat. So I'm going to give this a 8 out of 10 Andy Reids. We're just going to go with that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Corrie, you are up.
Yes. So I'm going to have you guys watch my latest anime obsession called Skate the Infinity. It's a skateboarding anime.
Skate the Infinity. And when did you discover this show?
So I actually watched it when it premiered about a month ago. It's only 12 episodes. Up to episode 7 is dubbed, so you can watch it subbed or dubbed. But basically it just follows Reiki, who is an avid skateboard fan. He becomes friends with the new transfer student, Longa, from Canada, who becomes a really great skateboarder because he used to be a snowboarder. And along the way, they meet a great cast of characters. My favorites being Joe and Shadow, which you won't understand why I love Shadow until episode 3.
Is this is the Shadow of where is that damn 4th Chaos Emerald?
No. This is a Shadow that the best way I describe it, he's Pennywise's skateboarding florist cousin.
What? I need to see this.
Yeah. Connor, I think you'll like this one. It's not like Oron High School Host Club at all.
Good.
But it's a lot of fun. I actually just got t-shirts of the show this week. They just came in, so I'm super excited. But I hope you like it, and I hope you end up watching past episode 1. I'm only having you watch episode 1, but if you like it, watch more, because I need friends to watch this with.
Well, I'm actually really looking forward to it. Is there anyone in it that I would recognize as far as cast?
Not off the top of my head. But there is a character who looks like grown-up Deku from My Hero Academia.
All right.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's Joe. He's an Italian chef.
Ooh.
Yes.
I'll gladly watch this and let you know. And you can also not only I'll like text you, but you can also listen to the recommendation on the podcast from everyone. And normally Johhny would go as well, but he has quit for this week, permanently for 1 week. So he's gonna be, when he comes back, he'll have his recommendation as well. Hey guys, this is Connor here. Sorry about the poor audio quality. The air conditioning is blasting in the background. Just a quick side note I needed to add to the podcast while editing it. Johhny actually did end up giving me his recommendation after the fact, so there's still plenty of time to include it here. His recommendation for the week is the Try Guys video, We Need to Talk About Anti-Asian Hate. You can find that on YouTube. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long. So go ahead and give that a listen with us and let us know in the comments down below what you think of it as well. And yeah, so back to the regular scheduled program. We're going to move on from recommendations into thanking the people that make this podcast possible. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast. Visit anchor.fm to start your own. This podcast is also sponsored by ByLightFixtures.com. Visit ByLightFixtures.com for a trusted source of quality lighting products for your business or home. Also, a huge thank you to Tom Taylor from Tailored Beats for the intro and outro of this podcast. Go ahead and follow him on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/tailoredproductions. Definitely a big shout out to our pal of the podcast, Zach Perez, and his new show, Title Screen. The new podcast features Zach discussing his guest's most influential video game of all time. And go ahead and listen to Luke's episode on Crash Team Racing. It's out now on all the same podcast services that you can find Rocket Talk on. And go ahead and follow the show on Twitter at Title Screen Pod. And then, yeah, go ahead, please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Go ahead and share this podcast with all your friends and family. You can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, and I mean, you can find us pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts and stuff like that. So, yeah, we got plenty of great content for you guys coming in the future. But right now, I want to give a huge thank you to Corrie for being on this podcast. And go ahead, tell them where they can find you.
You can find my personal accounts on Twitter. That's Miss_Kitten1067. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok as Miss_Kitten97. And you can check us out on Nerdmageddon on our Facebook page and on Twitter, even though we're not active on Twitter very much.
And you know what? Corrie's going to be on the podcast a lot more in the future.
Yeah.
Because she's moving up here to the Great White North, and she'll be rooming with Johhny, and that's actually coming very, very soon. So look forward to more Miss Kitten in the future, and we've got plenty of content planned with her and planned involving her. Both on the production side and on the content side as well, and being behind the mic behind. Can I say behind the camera? I'm pretty sure you still plan. I guess. Yeah, you'll be behind the camera as well because we plan on having her vlog a lot because you are the perfect person for that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize that. That was accidental. My bad. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please go ahead and tune in next week for episode 58, where hopefully all three of us will be back in black. So see you guys later.